And now, it's The Law Show on CL 650. A comprehensive look at everything you need to know about the law. Now, here's Sterling Fox.
I really can't stay.
But baby, it's cold outside.
I've got to go away.
But baby, it's cold.
Oh, we're counting the sleeps now till the big day, and there's only about 5 more. Good morning, and welcome to The Law Show here on CIL 650. Sterling Fox with you, joined in studio by Rudy Kisher and Alex Stojcevic from Maynard Kisher Stojcevic, immigration and citizenship lawyers in Vancouver. Gentlemen, compliments of the season, and good morning to you both.
Good morning, Sterling.
Good morning, Sterling. Merry Christmas.
Well, the same to you, Alex. Talk to us a little bit about MKS, Maynard Kisher Stojcevic. Tell us a little bit about your firm, how long you've been around, and the sort of work that you do. Immigration and citizenship lawyers is fairly self-evident, but dig a little deeper for us here.
Well, the firm started in November of 2002, and we've been in our current sort of incarnation as Maynard Kisher Stojcevic for a little over 10 years now. We are what is referred to as a boutique law firm. We only really deal with immigration and citizenship issues. And we focus on we have 3 different sort of layers of our business, if you will.
Okay.
We have individual work that we do for individual clients. That's our personal services element of the practice. We also work for institutional and corporate clients. I would say that's probably our largest segment. And then our third segment is we also deal with immigration litigation, where we defend people or act on one entity's behalf or another entity's in litigation involving immigration issues.
Okay, so now, Rudy, when you talk about the individual clients who seek out your services, it's navigating the maze. It's trying to get the immigration thing, or trying to get through it all. What is a typical client who comes to you as an individual and says, "For goodness sake, help me out"? What kind of troubles are they facing usually?
Well, I mean, I don't think we have a typical client. Because immigration is sort of human-based at the end of the day, everybody's story is a little bit different.
Sure,
so
of course.
It runs the gamut. So, in the personal side, we will deal often with Canadians that are here and may have family members abroad, right? And so they come in and they want to help them come to Canada. And so we look at a variety of means, perhaps through family sponsorship. So, if somebody has immigrated here and they've got still perhaps their parents or their grandparents overseas that they'd like to help them,
right?
And we would sort of look at the family sponsorship route and see if they qualify, and then help them prepare that application, submit it for them. If they have perhaps a brother or sister which they can't sponsor, which is not allowed, then we talk about maybe perhaps different economic streams for them that they could take a look at and say, well, if my brother or sister were able to get a job over here, would they eventually be able to immigrate, right? So on the individual stream, that happens. Or often we deal with people that are not Canadians that are here on a temporary basis. So
okay.
They've come over to study
and want to extend their stay.
Exactly.
Okay.
They've come here and they want to extend their stay, or they'd like to stay permanently. So they've come here as students. They've gotten a degree maybe from UBC, and they're thinking, well, I'd like to stay and work and maybe become part of Canadian society, become a permanent resident citizen eventually, and we help them with that. So,
right. Alex, when it comes to trying to navigate the immigration system, and both you and Rudy and Gordon, your other partner, have pointed out on this program many times, the immigration system is difficult for the lawyers involved to keep up with in terms of new governments, new rules, new policies, etc. So the average individual trying, for example, to find out about sponsorships, can I get my brother in? No. Can I get my mother in? Yes. All of this information is supposed to be available to us on the Government of Canada website. Well, we go to those websites and we frequently just hit a big old brick wall. Is that why people come to lawyers with immigration things? Just because it is just so tough to keep up with, Alex?
Well, the challenges that we've faced in the last decade in particular, there's certainly a lot more information available online.
Mm-hmm.
And so for certain people who are particularly tech savvy or who are comfortable with navigating information online, there are a segment of people who are probably somewhat better informed than they used to be. However, the problem is that those websites tell you information without any interpretive element to it.
Right.
So what they're not saying to you is what works best in your case. And because of government cutbacks in the last 7-8 years, every advantage we've gained online has been taken away in terms of offices that have been closed, interfaces with the public, Immigration officers in various parts of the country who used to be available for someone to walk into an office and ask a question, they're no longer there. You instead are now stuck with a call center in Montreal that is supposed to cover the whole country, and a call center that, sadly, most people sit on hold indefinitely and then get one answer from one call center agent and another from another, and if they get through it all. And that's the challenge of this information technology change that we've gone through, is that it has been very convenient for government in terms of cutting costs potentially, but it hasn't served the public particularly well.
And of course, their rationale all the way along as well. We're cutting costs, we're reducing costs, but look at the website. What we've done is we've taken away maybe a few people, but we've replaced it with information technology that'll just dazzle the masses, Rudy, and the masses remain yet to be impressed, let alone dazzled.
I mean, the challenge is that there is no strategy. There's no what is best for you here,
right?
And that's the value that firms like ours try to.
I mean, if you look at us, we're more like doctors. When you come to us, every patient's in it. Like we were talking about a typical case, and so there isn't a typical case. Somebody comes, and
a typical case is someone having an issue with the immigration department, and that's about as typical as it gets, right?
And also, well, the problem is the client often comes with this. Well, I've talked to a bunch of friends, and I want to know about this.
Right.
And you start asking them questions. Well, what do you do? Where are you from? You know, how long you've been in Canada? Like, they don't want to hear. No, I want to. You know, I want you to tell me about this program. And you know, they're fixated on a program when they don't realize there's a plethora of programs out there. There's a bunch of options out there.
Right.
And until we sort of fully spend the 15 minutes, the half an hour to get to know who you are, who you're married to, what stage of life are you at, are you working, what's your job like, are you self-employed?
Yep.
You know, then we can take a look and sort of give you size. Well, this might work for you. But the problem, the challenge we face is actually explaining to the client, we can't give you a 2-minute answer. So often we get a call and people are like, well, can you just tell me which program would be best? It'll take 5 minutes. And you sort of have to slow down and say, it's not going to take 5 minutes. Well, I just need 15 minutes of your time. You don't need 15 minutes. Usually we figure we need about an hour and a half for somebody to come in so we understand who they are, what they need, and then we can go through the different options because they may have more than one option.
Right.
But it depends. I don't know. Are they going to be happy if they're coming to sponsor their new wife? If the wife stays here, are they going to be happy if the wife is abroad for a year? And is that better for them? If she comes here, she won't be able to work. Can they survive that financially? And you have to look at all these, explore these different options before we pick a path.
And that one program that person may have been fixated upon, Rudy, may be something for which that person would be completely ineligible, but there may be an alternative that would be of even more benefit.
Yeah, well, I mean, and often sometimes those programs work for somebody else,
yes,
right?
Yes.
And they don't realize there's a subtle difference in that person's circumstances compared to theirs. It makes the whole thing.
Or it happened 5 years ago and the rules have changed.
Yes. Yeah. The firm also, and you mentioned this a few moments ago, Rudy, the firm also does work with corporations and other clients like universities. What sort of work do you do with them?
Well, with university, we've helped people come in. If they're looking for a new dean or a certain professor that they can't find here, we've helped them apply for what's called labor market impact assessments, which shows that we can't find somebody out here to do that work, or research assistance. If they're doing research up at UBC, for example, they need certain oncologists that we may not be able to find here in Canada,
right?
And we're able to sort of demonstrate that there's a lack of those people in Canada, or there are certain exemptions that allow them to come in if they're coming from the United States under NAFTA, for example, that they can come in and start work as long as they have a job offer from the university.
Just to pick up on that, Alex, it used to be my understanding of the old green card system in the States was to be granted a green card, an entry visa. You had to somehow or another prove to them that you were going to do work there that no American was capable of doing. Well, and by the description that Rudy just gave me, it sounds like this local market assessment thing that you help clients go through is essentially the same thing. You have to prove to the government of Canada there's nobody in Canada capable of doing the job you want to come here to do. Is that the case?
Well, let's not conflate things here. First, what you're referring to is all simultaneously here, O visas in the United States, which are for exceptional achievement,
right?
H visas, which are limited and have a pathway to green cards. O's don't necessarily. It doesn't work exactly the same way. Labor market impact assessments, to some extent, do combine elements of the O category in the United States along with the self-employed category in Canada as an immigration category, but they're not really they aren't equatable entirely.
Okay.
So we need to step back from that a bit. And the other thing is
that's
the
the
green
understanding that a lot of people have.
Sure, because that's a uniquely Canadian perspective.
Okay.
Because the Canadians are users of those systems, right? In
Right.
the overall scheme in the United States, if you look at everybody, that's less of a there's less use of those categories by non-Canadians. They use different ones. But in the Canadian context, we treat everyone more or less the same in terms of labor market impact assessments. As we covered in another show, certain people are exempt from the labor market impact assessment process if there's a free trade agreement involved,
of course,
or something like that.
Right. Okay. Other law firms, occasionally, Maynard Kisher Stojkovic does work with other law firms. How does that work, Rudy? Do law firms with immigration issues who don't handle immigration come to you to sort of subcontract their immigration problems then?
Yeah, definitely. We end up with, some of our best work comes from other lawyers that they realize that this is an area that they don't have a specialty in. So, for example, I was recently working on a case where one Japanese company bought another company, right? And they had to bring in new executives to come over and assume the role of general manager to make sure that the policies and procedures that they're globally known for were going to be implemented in Canada.
Right, sure.
So the lawyer that does this sort of acquisition merger doesn't know how to do that work, doesn't want to do that work, doesn't specialize in that work.
But that's business law, and now you've got people, and that's immigration law.
That's immigration. So they'll call us and say, listen, we've just bought this company, or my client has just bought this company. They want to bring 3 of their guys over, and how soon can we get them, and how do we get them here, right? And then I would then work with the client in terms of looking who they want to bring over and preparing the paperwork and sort of advising what the best option is.
Can we talk about lineups for just a quick second? Because my curiosity is aroused by that corporate client that's the merger has taken place. They're flying in 3 senior managers to assume control of the new organization. These people are high-powered professionals. They're going to want to get here fast. What kind of lineup are they facing versus the kind of lineup a family sponsor might face? Are they an equal length lineup? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Night and day, really.
Okay.
I mean, every case is a little bit different, but example, parental sponsorships. Now, so if you're sponsoring, if someone comes into my office today and says, I want to sponsor my mother,
okay,
how soon can she get here?
And I'm sure people do that all the time, right?
They come in once in a while, and you say, well, where does she live? She lives in Russia. I'm like, well, we won't be able to get here 10 to 15 years.
Seriously?
That's what you're looking at in terms of her coming over as a permanent resident, right? We have an express entry system that if you have, a job offer for somebody, and we have a labor market impact assessment, that they would be permanent residents under this new express entry. If everything's aligned, they'd be in less than 12 months.
The business executives, in this case from Japan, would be under a year.
If we were looking to get permanent residency, and we had what's called a labor market impact assessment.
Now, back to the mother, though, Alex. If it's going to take 15 years to get mom into permanent residency status in Canada, that means she can still visit during that time, right? It's not that she has to wait for 15 years before we get to see her again.
Well, it depends, right? I mean, if she's eligible for a multiple entry visa, if she can get health care insurance for travelers that'll cover the government super visa program, there's a lot of variables.
Okay. And the variables will determine the length of the wait, among other things, right?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, hopefully going forward, the parental class doesn't take 10 or 15 years. But I mean, the reality is, if you're waiting in some countries, in China, India, the Philippines, it has taken between 5 and 10 years in the last decade. I would say. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah. Rudy, what's this? Oh, sorry.
I mean, you want to talk about a difference, and I think what this government I think has to look at fixing. There was an outcry about the way spouses are treated, for example. So if, say a hotel hires a brand new chef and the chef shows up from the United States and his wife is with him, his wife gets a work permit right away.
Oh, she does?
She does, right? So his wife gets work. Now, I marry someone who lives in Singapore. I'm a Canadian citizen, and I want to sponsor her.
To come to your country, to live with you.
I might have to wait 2 years before she gets here.
Really?
And won't even be able to get her a visitor visa. Won't be able to bring her over and start work. I mean, to me, that as a taxpayer, Canadian citizen, I've got to wait, because of the distrust or, a fear of sort of fraudulent marriages. So I've got to wait 2 years when my spouse gets here, meanwhile, somebody who's never paid any Canadian tax, is not a Canadian citizen, shows up the border and his wife gets a work permit right away. To me, that's an inequality in the system that is incomprehensible as a taxpayer.
Right. Any thoughts on that one, Alex, at all?
Well, the challenges are competitive to some extent. We didn't, back in 2003 or 2002, when this spousal policy was crystallized, before that it was fairly ad hoc. The only reason it existed at all is because other countries, it was seen that there'd be a competitive advantage to giving a spouse an open work permit, because complaint from industry across Canada was, wait a minute, if we're bringing in the spouse, but we can't bring this, if we're bringing in spouse one and they're coming to do a key job for us, that we've gone to the trouble of getting what was then called a labor market opinion or a free trade agreement work permit
from Lord knows where.
The spouse then can't work.
Right.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The spouse won't want to come. That means our person may not want to come.
Right.
Right? Our candidate may not.
And thus the change was created that Rudy just spoke about.
Yeah.
The chef and the wife that gets the automatic permit
so competitive pressure forced that to take place. The challenge is that with spouses, there hasn't been enough of an outcry. Although when there has been, you have things like, for example, last year, the pilot project for the spouse in Canada category. I mean, so outcries do matter. And as we've discussed on this show, number of times, if you make your politician aware of your immigration concerns, things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, and as we've seen in quite recent times, things can happen in a rather big way with enough of an outcry. Need to take a quick break here, and it's a good point, Alex, to stop, because when we come back here on The Law Show this last Sunday morning with our friends Rudy Kisher and Alex Stoicevich, we're going to talk about the top cases and the top files from 2015, and, of course, the change of government and the challenges facing the new regime in the new year. This is The Law Show on CIL 650. Our guests are Alex Stoicevich and Rudy Kisher. The firm is Maynard Kisher Stoicevich, immigration and citizenship lawyers on Hamilton Street in Vancouver and online at vancouverlaw.ca. Back with more after this.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CIL 650.